wanted to welcome everyone again to week 5 of teaching face-to-face blended and online learning. This week we're going to be, our presenters are going to be discussing the hard data on learning outcomes. And we're going to start with Julie Nichols and Kristen Johnson. Julie is the Library Instruction Coordinator for Northeast Lakeview College, the newest of the Alamo colleges located in San Antonio, Texas. She's worked in various types of libraries for more than 20 years and specifically in community college libraries for 6 years. At NLC, she teaches approximately 75 one-shot instruction sessions each year and also manages a required online information literacy course for 800 to 900 students enrolled in an introductory English composition course. Julie's colleague, Kristen Johnson, is originally from Chicago and received her master's in library and information science from Dominican University. She currently lives in Texas, where she works as a public services librarian for Northwest Vista College. And Kristen loves zombies, chocolate, and coffee. And with that, Kristen and Julie, are you ready for me to give you the stage?
Sure. I think Kristen has the slides.
Okie doke. Okay, Kristen, I can see your screen.
Me too.
Okay. It's all yours.
Thank you. All right, and I am at Northeast Lakeview College. We're kind of beside a lake, but we actually just have a view of it. Today, Kristen and I really want to share with you the story of how we revised our method of providing instruction on the use of library and information resources to a very specific set of students. So before Kristen gets into the statistics, I want to give you a little background on the project. Okay, we used Softchalk to develop a set of lessons that were directed toward students enrolled in a course called SDEV 0370. Now this is a semester-long student development course, and it's required of students who are also enrolled in 2 or more developmental classes. And students are placed in these developmental reading, English, or math classes based, of course, on their placement test scores. So they're non-credit courses that students have to test out of before they get to move on to credit classes. You in your institutions may be more familiar with the term remedial. Our district just happens to use the term developmental. So the SDEV 0370 course is designed to help students get prepared for college level work. And they have things like time management, test-taking skills, goal setting, and as you can see, we typically have several hundred students enrolled in these SDEV 0370 classes every semester. Now these students do have a required career exploration project, and typically the students would come to the library as a class for a face-to-face, what we call one-shot instruction session of either 50 minutes or 75 minutes. We really didn't feel that our traditional instructional approach was very effective for this group of students. We tried to incorporate a lot of activities, hands-on learning. There really was just too much content for the students to absorb and then actually be able to later apply effectively when they were again working on this career paper. So we began some dialogue with the faculty in the student development area and came up with this idea of using Softchalk lessons that are online to teach the students about the various information resources they could use for their assignment. And the modules provide students actually more content than we can cover in a face-to-face session, but they allow the students to work at their own pace. Also, they have 24/7 access to the lessons, and the time that they work on the lessons doesn't take time away from classroom instruction. So we began this pilot in the fall of 2011, and we selected classes that would utilize only the online modules. And then there were other sections that actually came to the library for the traditional instruction. Now each group had a final post-assessment. They either took this post-assessment at the end of the 4 online lessons, or they took it in our classroom at the end of the face-to-face instruction session. So even though the students that were using the online modules actually had, more content, we asked questions on this post-test that were over common content that both groups actually had seen. And we continued that pilot on into the spring semester. And as well, each semester there were 2 faculty members who taught multiple sections of this course. And we had one section utilize the online module, and we had the other section come to the library for the face-to-face instruction. And we felt like this kind of gave us some really good opportunities to compare almost apples to apples. The tutorial, the class, is designed around 4 modules that covers a variety of content. Each one of the modules follows the same format. It has this fun little intro video that hopefully immediately engages the students. There are learning objectives outlined. Then there are how-to videos. So we demonstrate to the students how to do a particular task. We follow that up with learning activities so they can practice doing that task. And then there's a 10-point quiz at the end of each of those modules. And then, of course, that final module is the comprehensive post-test. And as I mentioned, both groups actually took that final test. Now, Kristen's going to give you a look at one of our modules, and then she's also going to give you details on what we found out about how students learn in these 2 different environments.
Yes. First, I'm going to quickly show you what they look like. We housed our modules on a LibGuide so that it was accessible to anyone. So it's outside of our LMS, and we have some information on how to actually use the tutorials here. And we have each tutorial on a tab with, and I'm going to show you the degree tools today. So we have it here with links to everything, and then of course our final exam, which is used for both the face-to-face and the online students, is on the last tab. Okay, so this is the degree tools module. I'm going to just log in really quickly just to show you what it looks like. Each module starts the same as Julie mentioned, and they all have a very similar feel. That way it's easy for the students to navigate. Once they've done one, they kind of understand what's coming. And you can log in and out as you wish. So the first one starts with a little introduction with an introductory video, which I made through Extra Normal, which is a really fun, free tool. And then we give them the learning objectives. So we spell it out, what we're going to tell them, and then we actually go through and tell them. So then they actually go through the module, and there's, we tell them what a database is, what this specific database that we want them to learn, which is the Testing and Education Reference Center, which is a really great database. And then we actually give them a video on how to use it, so they can watch the video. It has closed captioning. We did this video through Camtasia. And then we actually have part of the quiz right after that video as a hands-on. So they actually go to the database and look for schools in Texas that offer an associate's degree in agribusiness. And then they answer some questions based on what they find in the database. So that we give them a hands-on activity right away, and it's graded, so it actually tells them, if they're doing it right or wrong, which is great. So it's nice interaction, and they can do it throughout the tutorial. And then our final exam looks very similar to the quizzes from each of the modules. So I'm going to log in really quickly. And again, you can log in and out of the final exam too. So I'm going to start a new one right now, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And then here's the final exam. So each student's each student, face-to-face or online, saw this post-assessment. So they each had the same one with their score at the end, and once they finished, they'd actually print out a certificate. How we gathered the data. We actually were initially tracking data with Softchalk's score tracker, which was great because it allowed us to download the data from online, and actually we gave the faculty access as well as the librarians, so anyone could log in and get the scores they needed. We also offered to email the faculty scores just to make it a little bit easier, and actually all of the faculty had us just email the scores, but they did, if they wanted to, they could go in and access them. It was very easy to use, and actually was really nice because we created classes within the score tracker, which made it even easier to track which students were in what class and what their grades were. And right now we moved to the Softchalk Score Center, which is even better, I think. It allows data downloads again, and right now we just have it set so just the librarians have access to the data, and we just email the scores to the faculty members if they ask. But right now we are having the students print out certificates with their scores and handing them to the instructor, so they could do it from anywhere, print out their certificates. However, if the faculty wants, we can email it to them as well. And we had it agreed that the students need to get a 70 in order to pass. And they have multiple chances, so because we want them to learn and understand what's being taught, so that's why we are giving them multiple chances to do it and reach a minimum of 70. And it's in the Score Center we can actually see individual answers to questions, so we can actually do a question-by-question analysis just to help make sure that each time each of the students are understanding what they need to, and we can see if maybe we're missing something or maybe there's a weirdly worded question. So it's very nice. So this is our data. We actually saw in our pilot of the first semester, we saw that our online students scored much higher than our traditional face-to-face students on this post-test, with the average score for the face-to-face being about 37% and the average score for our online students being 63%. However, the completion rate for the face-to-face was much higher than the completion rate for the online students, with the completion rate for the face-to-face being 64% versus online it was about 50%. And in spring, we continue to see that the online students were doing much better than the face-to-face, with the online students getting an average score of about 73%, and the face-to-face students are getting an average score of about 45%. Again, the completion rates are higher for the face-to-face students than the online, with the face-to-face students completion rate being almost 61% and the online students about 27%. Overall, we had an average score for our face-to-face about 63%, I'm sorry, 40% for our average score, and online 65%. So they really did a great job at understanding what the content was with the online versus the face-to-face. We just need to bump up our completion rate. And we think the completion rate was higher for the face-to-face because they were in the class right there. We made them take the post-test right away. Whereas the online, they could do it at their own pace, and there was not a grade attached to it at first, and that can definitely affect our completion rate. Which brings me to the factors. Some of the factors some of the factors for these numbers, we had an initial lack of buy-in from the faculty, so we think that could have been part of why the completion rates were so low. And also this is trial numbers, so we don't have a very large set right now. Also, we did allow both sets of students multiple chances to take the test, so they could take the post-test as many times as they wanted. Most didn't take advantage of that. However, with the face-to-face, they did have time constraints. So they only had about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes to take that post-assessment. So that kind of limited how many times they could take it, whereas the online students could take it again and again and again without any time constraints. Some of the technology could have also been a factor, just some barriers. How comfortable the students were with the technology. Also, we had a picture that was really, really small, and the students actually were talking about how they couldn't read it, so that affected the test as well. And then some of the factors with the faculty was whether or not they assigned it as extra credit or a grade. Those that assigned as a grade, we had a much better completion rate than those that it was just extra credit. Also, scheduling computer time for class was a major factor too, because when the teachers were emphasizing that they really wanted the students to do this, and they would schedule the computer time for the classes, the classes would actually do it. So that was kind of cool. So in the future, what we have, what we're thinking about, the pilot was approved, which we're super excited about, and so we wanted to go through and revamp the modules a little bit. So we're recreating all the Camtasia videos because actually a lot of the websites changed their looks right when we were making the videos, so we actually had to redo them anyway. We're altering some of the problematic questions, like the picture size in that one question, adding a lot more interactive features, and we're going to continue dialoguing with our faculty, and we're going to have workshops to talk to them about what we're doing, and we're going to actually map what we're doing to their student learning outcomes. We've already agreed on a minimum passing score and printing of certificates, and we're also going to keep on analyzing the data. We're going to go through and make sure whether or not there's any more problematic questions, and keep seeing that hopefully our online students are going to be doing so much better than the face-to-face. We can also look at with the new score center, we can actually choose which attempt to use, which is kind of cool. So we can just focus on first attempt, or we can just focus on highest score. So that's kind of nice too. So, any questions?
Okay, we'll get to maybe one question before we move on, and then there are a number of questions that the audience had. So we'll get one question now. From Karen. She says, are the exam questions randomized, and how many chances does a student have to get a passing grade?
Okay, I'll jump in there. In terms of the number of chances, as Kristen mentioned, we're okay with students taking multiple opportunities to get the required score. In the pilot year, there was not a required score. So basically, it was up to the student to decide whether or not they wanted to go on and try to get a higher score. That was factored in by whether the faculty member was counting it as a grade. If the faculty member counted it as a grade, like a quiz or an assignment grade, students tended to go back and repeat the modules and try to get a higher score. Now we have set, again, in dialoguing with the faculty, we said, let's set a minimum passing score. Now, some students are going to get that the first time, and some students are going to take multiple chances. This is really more, we want to make sure the students understand the concepts that we're trying to get across. In terms of them being randomized, no, everybody saw exactly the same questions in the same order. So it was pretty much the same content was covered in the questions, and they saw pretty much the same exact questions. The time factor, as Kristen mentioned, those students who were in our classroom taking the test, we gave them about 10 minutes to do it, which there's 10 questions, and spent some time explaining how it would work. Again, we got a higher completion rate, we just didn't get that higher rate of learning as evidenced by the scores.
Okay, well, thank you. And like I said, the questions are rolling in, but we're going to move on, and we'll save these questions for the Q&A session. And we're going to move on now to Jim Brown. So I want to start out with Jim Brown is an associate professor of science and former dean of science, engineering, health sciences, and human performance at Ocean County College in Toms River, New Jersey. Dr. Brown is a pioneer in creating online courses and has developed over 40 online courses in science, health sciences, and public health. He was one of the first to develop microbiology totally online. Dr. Brown received a BA from Rutgers College and an MS and PhD in microbiology from Waxman Institute of Microbiology at Rutgers University. He earned an additional Master's of Science in Health Sciences from Jersey City State College. He is taught at the Johns Hopkins Medical School and at the New York College of Osteopathic Medicine. Dr. Brown is also a past president of the New Jersey Public Health Association and an international speaker on issues in microbiology, biology, public health, healthcare, and online education and biosafety. Jim, are you ready to take the stage?
I don't have the...
I'm going to give it to you right now.
Okay. There we go.
Okay, I can see your slides, so on with the show.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Very good. Okay. Okay, we're going to be talking about the hard data today, and I'm going to go over I was the former dean, as you'd heard, of Ocean County College. Science, engineering, health sciences, and human performance. And I had two big areas that we really put online. One was nursing, and the other one was science. And I'll show you here. Our first one was, we got a grant from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. It was really a hybrid RN program, and we originally called it the 1 day per week nursing program. And it was highly successful. The students would come in 1 day a week, and they would take their clinical, and the rest was taught totally online. And this would allow students who were working full-time to continue to work. They would attend those classes 1 day a week, and it was out at a hospital. So actually, we saved ourselves a whole building because the clinical aspects, the clinical labs they would run, were based at the hospital. So it really saved us from adding to a nursing building. And it was a very long day. They would actually stay 12 hours, and the rest is taught totally online. The big problem we had was, okay, it's fine, we had this 1 day a week nursing program, but what about the science prerequisites? Anatomy and physiology, chemistry, microbiology, so that was a real problem. So, but anyhow, the first thing when we put it up, we got this death by outline. It was terrible. We had these unending outlines that just went on and on and on and on. And the students hated it. They let us know they hate it. And what we did, it was just at the time we got an instructional designer and said, hey, we're going to try Softchalk. And Softchalk, a little bit of an advertisement here, but I love Softchalk. I'm a chalky. But I was designing before, and I couldn't get anything really interactive. I was using, you know, we didn't have any tools that we could actually put like a little game or something at the bottom of the page. Well, Softchalk has that built in, and you can learn how to use Softchalk in 2 hours. So we taught the professors how to use them, and they put in the little games and the drop and drag, things like that, and it made a huge difference. You could import all the images so easily and also little videos. So it was great, and boy, did that made a huge difference. The students loved it. The pages look great. So enough on Softchalk, but it's I really absolutely love it, and it did wonders for us. Now, as far as the assessment goes, we got this grant from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We had to assess the students on the way in the door all the way through every semester, and we used the ATI, and this was the assessment-driven review here. And what they would do is they would take this test, and the test was proctored. And then they would go through, it would tell them where they need to remediate, and sure enough, they would take it again and they would be successful. There was a lot of opposition to this originally. And when the first group came through, Nursing 1, which is the fundamentals of nursing, and we got in the 97th percentile on the students in the 1 day a week program. The traditional cohorts, it was the 59th percentile and the 68th percentile. So this, a lot of people started to wake up to this because it was based on ATI, and they actually had, it was, you know, you were compared against 10 or 12,000 students nationally. So they were very, very strong results. On this one, here's a typical report we would get at the time, and here you can see this was the fundamentals of nursing, and we were in the 97th percentile here. It would also show you the the areas where you were weak in, so you knew you could go back in. And on this one, I think it's communication skills is someplace we really needed to focus on. But it was great. So we did this every semester. Well, absolutely every semester, the face-to-face, the one-day-a-week nursing program just outperformed the face-to-face semester after semester after semester. Now, we did match pair analysis coming into the program. So they would actually take the test of essential academic skills, and we matched the students so they had the same GPA, the same results on that, and then they went forward with that. So, and as far as the what you get on the Nclex-Rn exam is the proof of the pudding. So we got 100% pass rate on our first one coming through, and ever since we've had 100% pass rate. The face-to-face at that time had an 88%. That has improved. That's up to 100% now as well. But it was really a crowning achievement back then. And a problem we had back then was we did have some problems with retention rate, but that has come online. Now we had the problem with science. What do we do with science? We can't have them coming 3 days a week for a one-day-a-week nursing program for anatomy and physiology or microbiology. So Dr. Larson, he's our visionary president, he came back from a conference and he said, hey Jim, he says, I saw this at a conference. It's some kind of a lab in a box. I want you to go out and take a look at this. And this solved our problem because what we were looking for is we could put these science courses online, not a problem. It was the lab part that we had the problem with. And that was very controversial at the time because a lot of schools would not accept and transfer if you had a virtual laboratory. They were pretty much adamant. They didn't want that. They wanted a hands-on experience. Well, anyhow, here I am speaking out in the University of Colorado about the whole brave new world of putting science courses online. And sure enough, we found a group out there called Hands-On Labs, and they produce these little lab packs. And the lab packs are really sharp because you can ship them anywhere in the country and the world. We use it a lot for the military. You can just go down to your local post office, they mail them out, and they get shipped right on out to Afghanistan. It has worked out extremely well for us. So this is the microbiology here. But what we wanted to do, there's a lot of people had a lot of questions. Well, is this just as good? And we wanted to try to prove this. So what we did is we did the online versus face-to-face course level assessment. At the very end, they got the exact same exam, and we actually had them. Some of the online students were too far away, especially in the summertime. The last one I taught in microbiology, of 24 students, only 6 were from New Jersey, 8 were from California, go figure. But again, here's our online versus the face-to-face, and they outperformed them. Now what we did is we actually had them come into the testing center. Now if they lived too far away, we couldn't do it. But if they live close by, and during the year many of them do, so they'd come into the testing center and they would take the test. So we controlled the test. And the other thing we did is we controlled the professor. So I was teaching both sections, and sure enough, here's the results here. And this is just for the lab practical. I developed a lab practical that was really based on there was a bunch of pictures, and I put it into a PowerPoint. But the difference was phenomenal here. 90% pass rate on the online using the lab packs, and 82% on the face-to-face. And that's with 2 lab sections each one combined. So that was some pretty strong evidence there, and that was the first time we actually looked at the laboratory, just the laboratory component, to see how that was doing. Also, we did anatomy and physiology. And this one, they took the HAPS exam, and the nice thing is if you can compare your results to, like we did with nursing, where we had the ATI, well, the HAPS, they have this exam they take for anatomy and physiology nationally. And on this one, our online versus the on campus, basically they got the same scores. So at least it said it's just as good. So that helped with the anatomy and physiology. And this really helped it sell it. When I was dean, I would have deans call up all the time and ask us exactly how we're doing this, and can we send them the syllabus, that sort of thing. And they were very impressed when they saw this sort of the testing we were doing with it. Now, here's what I've done. I've actually got data from other schools doing similar things, and this is the CCC online in Colorado there, the Colorado Community Colleges online, and this is their General Biology 1. And they found very similar results, so that each year, and I think 2009, each year they outperformed on each one. And here is their anatomy and physiology one, and this is 2004 to 2009. And again, you get that they did, I mean, statistically, I'd say they just did as well. But that's what we're finding. It's either better or as well. And a lot of people, you know, ask, okay, what's the, why is this happening with the online? Well, with the nursing, we went back and looked very careful at what it was that caused the online students to do so much better than the face-to-face students. And they had the same GPA coming into it. Their test was the test results on the ATI was just the same. But what it was is they were motivated. They had that kind of stick-to-itness. In New Jersey, we would call it that moxie. But that sort of self-determination. So many students, it's the only way they can do it is taking the courses online. It's opened up a whole new world. As I say, we've got students in all over the world, especially the military, in Afghanistan taking these courses, and it's phenomenal. Now here's another one, Colorado Mountain College here, and they have a very similar thing. This was their general chemistry, and what they did is they went and got compared themselves through the ACS exam, and that's the American Chemical Society. So this gives a lot of power to it when you're taking these national exams, and you can point to it and say, well, you know what, the distance learning and the face-to-face, they're doing just about the same, or better in some cases. And here's Herkimer County Community College here, and that they got, this is I'm not sure if it's general biology or what, it just says course in biology, and they outperformed as well. So it's not unusual for this to happen. There seems to be a self-selection for students who really have to do it this way. And now the one thing I found, I was an assistant dean at New Jersey City University. That's where I started my experience with the online courses. A very important thing, right up front, what I did is, and I encourage the faculty to do this, if you get a student online, within the first 48 hours, if you see they're not in, I called them up on the phone. I said, hey, it's Jim Brown. I see you haven't been able to get in yet. Can I help you in any way? And if you get them over that, you know, some professors had the attitude, oh, well, it's an online course. They should be able to read the emails and do this. No, you have to realize it's deer in the headlights. They're afraid of it. And you have to just get them over that initial hump. Then you've got them. And if you did that, you would have a 90 to 95% retention rate. And then if you didn't, many times it's 60, 70% retention rate. That's not saying they passed the course. That's just basically they stayed into the very end. So that's something we found, that kind of communication there right up front. And now I think, as you've seen in other webinars, by getting on board and having the students so that you welcome them on board, try to put up a little video of you welcoming them. The beginning of the week, say hello to them. I hope you had a nice weekend. And then at the end of the week, you'd say, hey, everybody have a nice weekend. That's a trick I actually picked up from someone else in these webinars. But that all helps with the retention. And also with these lab packs, we've had no trouble transferring our courses to other schools. What I usually do is they'll call up and ask about the microbiology. I'll send them the lab manual, and I'll also send them the syllabus, and when they look at it, they say, hey, wow, this is terrific. And another thing, this is me on the island of Calabria. It's part of the part of Puerto Rico, and I'm teaching 3 online courses from here. This was me in May. It was wonderful, and that's the beauty of, you know, teaching online now. So, and this whole series, and what I've done is I've just started teaching from the cloud, totally from the cloud. This is an introduction to public health course, and I teach it entirely from the cloud. So it's a whole new world there. Okay, I guess we're going to have questions. I'm going to turn it back over.
Okay, I'll go ahead, Jim, and take the screen back here. Give me a second. Okay, Jim, we did had a question about some people were really interested in the lab packs and wanted to know about what was it cost effective to use the lab pack service with mailing versus holding the labs on campus with instructors.
Well,
also, where does the money come from? For the students and the lab fees or financial aid or?
Mm-hmm. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The beauty of the lab pack is and not being on campus, that whole face-to-face blended, well, that's fine if you're dealing with Ocean County. But the beauty is when you go online, the world is available to you, and that's what it opened up. I mean, when we started doing this, the anatomy and physiology, we had these students from Alaska. All of a sudden, we started seeing all these students come in from Alaska, and they saw from our website that we did this. The dean had called up there and said, "Hey, can you do this for us?" And I said, "Sure." And you know, they were happy with it. They advertised it up there, and sure enough, they came in. Now, the lab packs are not especially. Now, we're from New Jersey, and even though it's a small little state, getting around New Jersey, especially with the gas prices, I mean, it's incredible. So some lab packs are as cheap as $200. Some are more expensive, like $390. And there's one thing, if they take the anatomy and physiology 1 and 2 and microbiology, they have to purchase a microscope. I think it's, don't quote me on the amount, but I think it's around $125. And if you're teaching the microbiology, you need an oil immersion lens, so that's another $51. But when you figure what you're going to spend traveling the campus 3 times a week, even if you live close by, I mean, that more than makes up for it. And the microscope they can actually use for all 3, anatomy and physiology 1 and 2 and microbiology. So it's really, they're very cost effective. And what I did is we were running out of space in science. And we had a new science building, but we ran out of space. The anatomy and physiology, I was running it 8 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. Every night it was totally filled. We were putting it on weekends, and then we had to go out to high schools and try to put it out into high schools at night. Well, they had lab space there and that sort of thing, but what we did is I actually bought the lab packs, had the students share a lab pack, and this way we would see if it was going to be viable out there. We might have, let's say, 12 or 14 students off-site. Well, it just made sense to buy the lab packs and put that into it, and then we would keep an eye on it whether we're going to keep that or not. And what we could do is we could easily just kind of get more things for the lab pack. As far as they had no problem going through and getting the lab pack paid for with financial aid. They would actually go through the bookstores, and I'm not as up on it as I used to be, but they would make it happen. The bookstore would order it, I believe, but that's the way we did it then. I'm not sure exactly what we're doing now with it. Was there part of that question?
They were wondering what was the name of that lab pack again. I think it was Hands-On Lab, wasn't it?
Hands-On Labs, yes. If you go back on the slides, you'll see I've got it there. It's Hands-On Labs. They're out of Colorado, and what I can do is, if you like, I can post that address. I can send that out to everybody. I'll put that on the slides. I'll put the address on there so everybody can.
And we'll be sharing the slides, and this webinar is being recorded, and everyone should receive a link to that recording Monday afternoon, this coming Monday.
I was really worried when we did this. I was very worried about the quality of the lab pack. I actually went out to see it. Now, I'm a former Assistant Commissioner of Health for the state of New Jersey, I was in charge of the public health and environmental labs, and we actually inspected all of the clinical labs in the state of New Jersey, including the hospitals. I'd also grew up as a lab rat, putting myself through graduate school. I worked as a microbiologist in a local hospital, and then I became the director of microbiology of what was then the largest microbiology lab in the country. It was Roche Biomedical Labs, and as far as a private clinical lab. So I knew exactly what should go into that, and I actually taught for the National Laboratory Training Network associated with CDC. So a lot of people were worried. Well, what about the safety of the organisms? They're all biosafety level 1 organisms, and I can't believe how well put together it is. It really follows what I did in a hospital when I worked there. It followed that kind of a clinical path there, and I just loved that because you weren't doing things that most of the students who were taking our microbiology were going into nursing. So it had a really nice clinical focus to it, the lab packs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think one question that John has been asking a couple of times is, this is directed, I believe, to Julie and Kristen, is how big was the trial that you were working with, the numbers from the population of the total possible?
For the online classes, we had 5 sections in the fall of 2011 and the spring of 2012 that did just the online modules. So that's, not sure the exact numbers, but it's 5 sections, and there's typically like 25 students in each one of the sections. Kristen may have the better handle on those numbers. And then the other classes were typical face-to-face. There were a lot more of them in the spring. That's usually when we have most of these SDiv classes when our students begin. I want to say it was like maybe 12 sections in the fall. Kristen she's got the numbers up in front of her that did face-to-face, and I think there were only 4 sections in the spring that did face-to-face. Is that correct, Kristen?
Actually, I'm trying to pull them up right now. I did not have them up in front of me. Sorry.
See, and I was stalling for you. Yeah, I was trying. Yeah, actually, I got it.
Oh, yes. It was fall, there were 18 sections, 533 students total, and in spring it was 13 sections, 283 students total. And then I have to look, and of those, I don't have the number of students that were online only, and I'd have to look that up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's probably something along the lines of, I said it was 5 sections in each one of those semesters, and you can do an average of about 25 students. So that's pretty close.
Mm-hmm. Were you, if this was for either Julie or Kristen, were you tempted to integrate the program into your learning management system?
It would be nice to do that. Okay, yeah, when you saw that. We actually do have another class that you mentioned, Mary, in the my intro. We have a class that's linked with our freshman composition that is in our learning management system, and maybe someday we'll move to that. I think that there's certain advantages to it. Some of it is it's a little bit of the bureaucratic part of dealing with the fact that it then has to have a course number and things like that to be actually integrated into the registration system. So this was an easier way in some ways to quickly get this moved out. We can host it on what we call LibGuides. It's a program that our library purchases, and again gives the students 24/7 access. There's certainly advantages to having it in MLS, but right now this was the fastest way for us to skip some of those bureaucracies and just work with what we had available.
Mm-hmm. I know that both Julie and Kristen and Jim, both of you have been presenting your findings, at conferences, I believe. Are the results of the study available, your studies available, so that they can, our audience can share them with their faculty?
Well, they can certainly be in terms of our PowerPoint, and we can give more detail for sure as well too. So anybody's welcome to contact us, and we're happy to share. And
we will provide the email addresses for all of our presenters this afternoon. and they will also be able to see the various questions that you're asking that we can't get to today. Okay, let's see. They have do you think that the online students are doing better because they're more motivated or because the teaching learning paradigm is more effective? And
it's Jim, it's Jim Brown.
All of you.
It's Jim Brown, and I would say it's both. They certainly are more motivated. I remember one student said, it's the only way I could do it, so I had to do it. They were a single mom. They were working full-time. 50% of our students in the one-day-a-week nursing program, now they call it the on-site, online nursing program, 50% of them worked full-time. And you had some of them who were single parents, so there was a motivation there. And also with the military, I mean, it's, I actually had one soldier and student ended up dying, and I was just so shocked when that happened. It's just, you're not used to having things like that happen, but they have it so tough. What it does over there, you know, they have a few moments of absolute horror and terror followed by lengthy time of boredom. And what's nice about the online courses is that helps fill it. When they, you know, before they just have to put their life on hold before they get back home. And now they don't have to. They can actually get a good part of the degree out of the way. I'm going to be speaking next week at the Sloan C conference in Orlando about teaching science to the military, because that's a whole new area there. And you know, I'm going to be basically comparing the lab packs versus virtual. I've used both, and there's good things to say about both. I think you can see I've got this bias towards the lab packs. I just absolutely love those. But I think you know, it selects for the type of student who really this solves a problem for them. Others, if they're well financed and want that college experience, that sort of thing. Okay, they may not go for the online courses, but certainly there's so many students. The type of student we get now is a lot different than when I went to college. When I went to college, most people were there full-time and didn't have much else going on in their life. So it's not that anymore. It's like part-time jobs, full-time mom, single parent, that kind of thing.
And speaking of Sloan C, our friend Steve Holland is listening in today, and he mentioned that Julie Bryant of Noel Levitz is offering a study on how to help online learners at Sloan C, and she had 4 different items she was covering: measuring student readiness and having a dialogue with the student about their readiness, and communicating with readiness of reading, regularly monitoring, so online learner satisfaction. So there is another session at Sloan C speaking to how to help the online learners for all of you out there if you're going to be attending. Let me go down, and we have a number of questions. Some of them have already been answered. Are you keeping any data on how many times a quiz might be taken? And is that reflected in your data totals? And I think this was probably a question for Julie and Kristen.
Yeah, I think that one's for us. Yes, actually with Score Tracker and now with Score Center, you can do that. You can see how many times each student is actually taking a quiz, and you get some very detailed look even at individual questions within the quiz. So that gives us the opportunity to see maybe it's a question that we didn't write very well, or if we see a number of students just not doing well at it, perhaps we need to change the content to get that concept across. But you can get pretty detailed data, and of course we can decide we want to look at all of those numbers. The student gets to keep the highest score, so even if it takes them 2 or 3 times to get to that minimum passing, and hopefully beyond that, that's the score that they turn in, but we can see what other scores they got as well too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have the data. Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Go
for
ahead.
the last question, for spring we had 79 students total for the face-to-face that did the post-test, and 37 for spring, or for the online for spring. And in fall it was 274 for the face-to-face and 88 for the online.
Okay.
So.
Did you, I think this was probably during Jim's session that this question was asked. Did you choose to supplement the face-to-face with Softchalk and other, how did you choose to supplement the face-to-face with Softchalk and other, did you use other educational technologies besides LabPack and Softchalk?
Oh yeah, I use the little videos quite a bit, and the thing is, I integrate it right into Softchalk. It's I use Softchalk for everything, but also with the blended, I use it in my class all the time. I'll put up a little, let's say if I want to, see how well they understood something, I'll go right out there, post it on the course, or even if I'm giving a PowerPoint. I'll have it embedded right in so they can actually take a little crossword puzzle or a drop and drag there. They have a great time with it. This generation, let me tell you, they love games. And so I've used that quite a bit. But Skype is another thing I use quite a bit. If you saw the session I did on teaching science totally online, by using Skype, I can get on with someone in Afghanistan, a soldier there, and I can show them a microscope at this end, and they can see, I show them, typically how to use the microscope. Okay, here's your oil immersion lens. Put the oil on that now and swing the lens right in. It is so cool. It's as if they're sitting right beside me. So it's just, the technology is incredible, and as soon as I try to keep up with it and learn it, and that's the nice thing about having 6 kids, my older ones, well, even the younger ones. I mean, they'll teach you new tricks all the time. So I'm really trying to get into having all these little videos. Just with the videos, you got to think in terms of a commercial. They're only like 15 seconds, 25 seconds. An infomercial may be 30 seconds long to show them how to do an individual thing in the laboratory, and that's extremely helpful. So I'm in the middle of working on that now.
Okay. One question we had is, are any of you using or making pre-tests available so that the students can maybe take a test first and then target their learning, or do they really have to go through the course lockstep?
With our particular course, in this one, we do not do a pre-test. In another class in which we use a lot of Softchalk activities, in our LMS, they do take a pre-test to go through modules and then take a post-test. Gives us an idea of what they learned. With this one, again, it's just a different type of thing that we're trying to assess here. We do know our students, unlike Jim's perhaps, are a little less motivated. Many of them are actually upset that they're even in this SDEV class. They've taken a placement exam and then suddenly they're told, no, you're not quite ready for college level work. So the motivation isn't as strong for them, which is one of the reasons why we had to work with our faculty to say they need to get a grade on this. They don't want to learn for learning's sake just yet. But it does give them that opportunity to apply the information they need for this particular assignment, and then of course they're learning things that will help them in research for any of their classes down the road as well too.
Okay, well, we're almost on 3 minutes before the hour now, and Julie and Kristen and Jim, thank you so much for presenting the hard data today to our audience. We wanted to let you know that all 5 of the series on teaching face-to-face, blended, and online are being recorded and are available. You will receive a link, like I mentioned, on Monday afternoon to all 5 of these webinars, so feel free to watch them. And remember, if you want to tweet your experiences, use the hashtag that's on the screen here today. If you want to learn more about Softchalk, visit our website. We have a 30-day free trial for Softchalk Cloud, so if you're interested in learning more about that, we also have a number of webinars, including our Innovators in Online Learning series and 24/7 video tutorials and short courses. So you can learn more about Softchalk. If you're interested in learning more about the work done by Julie and Kristen and Jim, their email addresses are here. I'll leave them up on the screen for the remainder of this webinar. so feel free, to contact them and ask them any questions you have. I apologize if we didn't get to your questions today, but we will be reviewing those and be sending them to the presenter so that they can kind of scan them and see if they feel that they didn't get any of those questions answered. So feel free, to do that. And again, thank you all for joining us today. And again, thank you, Jim and Kristen and Julie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Oh, by the way,
and Jim, are you on the beach right now?
Yes, I am.
You are?
I'm looking out right at the river.
Wonderful. Well, I hope you all
by the
enjoy
way,
it.
Everyone, I've got 3 kids in college, so if you need a good microbiologist or a biologist to teach online, you know my email address. Thank you.
Well, you can just come and work for Softchalk, Jim.
I should.
All of you can. I think all of you do a little bit, but thank you all again, and enjoy the rest of your day.